Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good weekend. For some of you, it's already over, and for some of us, it's mostly over, but I hope you're all having an enjoyable Sunday at the very least. My name is Sarah Schira, and my microphone is very far from where I'm sitting here. So just give me a moment here. Let's pull it up front. Do love it when everyone pops in the chat where you're from. So go ahead and let me know where you're from. I have just returned from Germany late Friday night. I'm on day 2 of the time switch back, and I'm just going to warn you, I am probably going to be low energy and poorly focused. And I'm just going to do the absolute best I can, and we're all going to be fine because it's just gnomes. Um, my father-in-law, thank you for everyone who's been asking. My father-in-law is looking really good right now. So who knows if this is one of those things where the doctors are going to be wrong for a while, or whether things are just gonna who knows? Who knows, right? That's the thing about illness, and especially with hearts. Sometimes you can keep going for quite a while with a heart that's just doing its darndest. So if this is your first Zoom with me, welcome to Manitoba, Canada, my little study of whimsy. I feel like sometimes my job is to be professionally whimsical, which is an absolute delight. And my other part of my job, though, is to be extremely serious about teaching people how to knit and to give them the confidence that they need to do the things that they think maybe they can't do. And I think gnomes have proven over and over again to be an absolutely startling platform to convince people that they're willing to try new skills, because gnomes are so low stakes that people will give things a try that they wouldn't in a sweater or in a hat or whatever it is. So gnomes disarm people's boundaries or barriers to new skills. And so today we're going to do a couple of new skills. I don't think anything is brand new, or in terms of like weird knitting techniques, like brand new stitches or something, where we're going to be doing knitting gymnastics or anything like that. This week for Gnoddy, what I had planned, and it was really hard to tell where to break things up. So next week's actually a bit like heavy loaded in terms of the number of videos we're going to go through next week. And this week we only have 2 actually to go through. So what we did last week was we talked about the pom-poms for Gnoddy, and we did 1 in the hat color and 2 in our hand color of choice. Then we did the ear flaps and we joined them, and we did the knitted cast on, and we got that going in the round. And then we changed colors. We did the hat. We attached the bauble to the top of the hat, and we picked up stitches and started the yoke. So the yoke is the part of the sweater where it's sort of like the shoulder and neck area. And Gnoddy is wearing a top-down raglan. So the raglan is a very triangular seam right here. There are lots of ways of trying to get shoulders and arms into sweaters, and the raglan is one of them. That diagonal produces a nice amount of room. It was actually named after, I believe it was Lord Raglan, who was injured in, I think, the Napoleonic Wars, and who didn't want to have his valet always helping him put things on. Like the men's coats of the time were extremely tight fitting in the upper classes, and so Lord Raglan wanted to be able to just sort of shrug into his own coat a little more easily, and so they changed the cut, and they developed a new shoulder seam for him, or it was already known and he popularized it. I'm not sure exactly, but it's interesting. There's a number of knitting terms that actually kind of all spin back to soldiers in the British Empire. And we in Canada and the US, and we get our knitting terms from English, and English derives from England, so shouldn't be too surprising that a lot of things go back. So that's what we did last week. We started that raglan off. And this week, what I have planned for us to knit in terms of like portioning up the knitting work is to finish the sweater, because we stopped up here after we took the sleeves off. So you would finish the sweater this week after we talk. Although a lot of you I know are like you've finished your Gnoddies or whatever. That's fine. There's no rules about this. I just had to sort of break things up. So then what you would do is you will pick up for one sleeve and knit that sleeve down. And if you've never done a raglan or even a top-down circular yoke, you may not quite understand what's going on with what is happening. Like, why did we cast on stitches when we were working the body? So we separated the sleeves and we cast on some stitches under here. And what am I talking about and what's going on with how that relates to the sleeve is the one video that we're going to start with today. And then you'll finish knitting your sleeve, and then we'll do another video today for inserting the hand into the sleeve. Now, as I just said last week, Gnoddy is knit differently than any other gnome I've ever designed. Gnoddy's not wearing a sweater. Gnoddy is her sweater. She is made of sweater. And so she needs different approaches than other gnomes. So who have I got here to hand? Okay, so I've got Professor Fungi here. So a lot of our gnomes in the past, if they have arms, it's a I-cord arm that's knit in two colors. And there's a couple versions where the I-cord hand part is maybe made a little bigger. Actually, you can see right there. There's a kind of a bobble like circular effect on the end of that arm, and then it goes to the I-cord. A lot of times it's just straight I-cord to arm, just with a color change, sort of hinting at the switch from hand to sleeve. Whereas, and these arms are just sewn onto the bodies of the gnomes. Whereas Gnoddy is constructed of sweater. The sweater is picked up and knit down. There is no body under the body under the sweater. Gnoddy's just made of sweater. And so, of course, getting the hands in and stuffing the arms, those are new things that no one has done before. The book, this is all brand new. So this part is sort of one of the most special bits of Gnoddy is this sweater body construction. And so we'll talk about how to get the hands in and how to kind of lodge them in there and then secure them. So that would be sort of the workload for this week will be finishing the sweater, finishing the sleeves, and getting those arms up and in there. And then next week, it's very little knitting each week. And next week is actually going to have the least knitting of all of the weeks, I think, but possibly the most videos. So next week, we will deal with picking up from under the body and or under the sweater and sort of finishing off the body. We'll talk about stuffing. In particular, we're going to talk about stuffing the arms so that Gnoddy can kind of sometimes tend to go a little T-shaped. So we'll talk about stuffing the arms and how to make them maybe relax a little bit. And we'll talk about a few other things with that. Then we'll do the beard and the nose and we'll be done. Oh, we'll sew them on. We'll assemble Gnoddy. So that's kind of what's going to happen this week is we're just going to focus on the sweater and the hands this week. And then we'll move forwards. All right, I'm going to pop into chat now and just double check that it's all just been beautiful, cheerful geography and weather. That seems to be the best way to kick off a group meeting in any sense. All right, let me just double check. We are borderline snow. It was 30 degrees in Brandon when I left Germany, and now we are hovering around 0 degrees. So there's been a bit of a swing here that I didn't experience. I'm just sort of on the grim cuddly side. It was really warm in Germany and like and the season is considerably advanced. Things are flowering, which normally wouldn't flower for weeks. It's a very advanced spring. We're talking like those of you who are farmers, the barley is headed out and the canola is blooming. Like we're talking mind blowing. They have not seeded all the fields here yet. Okay, so looking good. I have not missed any questions. Just we got from New Zealand to California to local Winnipeg folks. We got Netherlands and a few other places. So thank you all for joining us today. If you have a question, the best thing for you to do is to electronically raise your hand. I have my myself spotlit, which means I dominate my screen for myself. And there's just a wee little strip of faces up at the top. But when you raise your hand electronically, it bumps you up to that top of that. And I can see that people are waiting with questions. So the way to do that, if you have your desktop, is to move your mouse and look for, usually at the bottom, something that says react. And mine has a heart now. Older versions had a smiley face. And if you tap on that or click on that, it will bring up an option to raise hand. And that will raise your hand and it will stay raised until you lower it. So if I then answer your question, you need to put your hand down yourself. I can't do it for you, just like real life. And then if you're on an iPad or a phone, you would be tapping your hand, your picture to kind of bring up those buttons. And then again, you're looking for the react button type thing. And generally speaking, the process is going to look something like that. You may alternatively just throw your question in chat and type it in, and I will come back regularly to chat and answer questions that we will be having. So unless somebody's got a question right off the bat, we are going to then start with the video on picking up stitches and working the sleeves. So I'm just going to wait a moment to see if anyone's going to type something or raise their hand, and I'm going to take some tea. Like I said, it's cold and I'm sleepy because I find this jet lag so much harder than going to Europe. I find that as long as I can stay up and do the thing, once I hit there, I'm fine. Here, it takes me days to get back and I'm sleepy. I'm a sleepy girl. All right, looks like no questions coming up. We'll just hop into the video then. And the great thing about the videos, I get to knit during them. It's just brilliant. Um, which it's also good because I really don't like listening to my voice and telling all the mistakes I made while filming. And I will say, then they say you should never like show off your sweater and point out all the mistakes you made. That sort of like never host a dinner and tell them that you had planned something much fancier. I'm going to do that though with this video. Editing this sleeve video in particular was really difficult. I had some camera problems and then I also had like some brain problems while filming this. So there were things I filmed and I filmed them out of order and I meant to go back and like put them in order and then it turned out it wouldn't work at all. So I ended up cutting a whole second half of this video. And I think it makes sense as edited. And if it doesn't, that's why we have these live Zooms so that you can talk to me and I can apologize and then be clearer. So hopefully this is all nice and clear. We're going to talk about picking up the stitches from the scrap yarn and then figuring out what to do with the underarm and getting everything sorted and on the needles. So let's go with that. I'm going to switch over to our video and hit play. So here we are with our gnome. Looks a little funny at this point with the sweater and no arms and no body and just these ear flaps flapping loose. I promise everything comes together in the end. But let's talk about putting the stitches back on needles and working the first round. I just want to note that I have not finished up weaving in this end because this leaves this so much wider and lets us put the hand in there before we sew it up and attach it. So don't close this up because you'll have a tiny inflexible sleeve, whereas now it's got this nice, almost like a button-up shirt with the cuff unbuttoned. All right, we've got everything on waste yarn, and what we're going to do is we're going to return the stitches to the needles. If you've got DPNs, you're going to have obviously either the standard thing would be to have 3, but I'm going to do half on this, just like for Magic Loop, and then I'll use a third to pick up across. If you're on Magic Loop, you're going to need to just use the 2, or you might want to use like a cable needle or something else to pick up and work on those, or an extra needle or something like that. But it also works just with the plain Magic Loop technique. So what we're going to do is we're going to carefully pick up each stitch from the waste yarn. And you can see that I don't have as much contrast as maybe I would have liked. I thought the orange was nice and bright and then realized afterwards just how much gold there was attached to this sleeve here. So it's a little harder to see than I'd like. Making sure you choose a smooth yarn for your scrap yarn is pretty important
because if you have a fuzzy yarn and you're grabbing the halo, it gets really kind of gnarly when you go to pull that waste yarn out. This last stitch will often get very small when you pull on this second to last stitch. This last stitch often disappears in, so you can kind of try to pull that up by pulling on the waste yarn and try to lift it. Another thing you can do is if you're struggling, is grab another needle and come at it like from the other side or even from the same approach. But because you're not using this needle, which is the one attached, and kind of pulling on this yarn pulls on that yarn, you completely separate it out. Sometimes it's easier. You can also use a smaller needle to do all of the pickups. If you've got a smaller size, you can go down a size, and as long as you then just remember to switch back to your regular size when you start knitting, picking up stitches with a smaller needle doesn't change how it all works up. So that's often great because then you've got more wiggle room because you literally have more room as the needles will be slimmer. I've got all of my stitches on waste yarn now back on my needle. So if we're going to see if I did a good job of not splitting the ply and grabbing this waste yarn, we'll see how smoothly it comes out. Oh, not too badly. We're good. All right. There we go. Waste yarn off, stitches on. So the anatomy of what we've got going here is we've got sort of almost like the way a kid would draw a house. We've got the little rectangle here of the house, and then we've got the triangle of the roof. And so we're going to knit across all of these stitches. We're going to pick up 2, place a stitch marker, and pick up 2. So we will have 4 stitches across the bottom here. Now we cast on 4 and we'll pick up 4. So there will be 4 little bumps that we can use to work our way across when we come to that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attach our yarn again, and we'll knit across all of the sleeve stitches. Make sure you leave a long tail. You can use that tail to close any holes and gaps that you get. As soon as I leave a long tail, it shortens up when I go to knit that first stitch. So just make sure you pull that longer back again and give yourself a generous amount. You might find it easier to work if you tuck the tail in now, or you may find that you want to pick up the stitches first and then tuck the tail, or you can work with that tail out to the outside the whole time. All 3 work, whatever works best for you. All right, so now we're going to pick up and knit. So we've got some pretty clear places, like this looks like a place. We've got here, 2, 3, 4. Usually I like to pick up a little closer to the edge, so I might pick up here rather than here. Let's just have a look. So picking up and knitting, usually we don't do that with gnomes. Usually we separate the picking up from the picking up and knitting just because it's so much simpler, but there's pretty much no other way to do that here. So I'm going to put my needle tip under where I think it would be a good place to pick up. And then we'll do that. And then do the next one. If you do just one, sometimes that can get a little gappy. So if you go under 2 legs, or kind of find a place where it looks good. This is pretty fudgeable. It's the armpit of a gnome. The odds that this will ever become public are pretty low, so don't fuss too much about this. Give yourself the grace of forgiveness and just have fun. Okay, so we've cast on 2. Now we need our beginning of round marker. And we didn't cast on 2, we picked up 2. Do 2 more. So we will slip that beginning of round marker, and now we will do the decrease round, and we will knit 2 together.
I'm just going to pause here. I think everyone can hear me talking now. Can I get a smile from Amelia? If I get a thumbs up, you can hear me. Great, Amelia. Your face is always near the top, Amelia. I'm just going to keep picking on you. All right. So I'm just going to pause here. If you weren't looking, I forgot to say out loud that I knit to the end of that first round. So I picked up stitches. I had picked up all 4, and then I knit to the end of that first round. And that's going to mean that the two stitches that I last picked up, the two that I am knitting together right now in the beginning of the decrease round, those are worked one time less than all the rest of the stitches in the sleeve, and that's no problem. I forgot, and so put a note on the screen right now that I was knitting to the end of the round, but I didn't say it out loud in a part that I didn't edit out, which is part of the problem. I did say it, just not not on this video. So I'm gonna hit play again and we'll keep going. So now we're doing the decrease round and we're decreasing on either side of the marker.
And then we will work to the end of the round and do an SSK modified, which is just my preferred way to do SSKs because they are just a little bit tidier. You can always do a regular SSK if you prefer. I'm going to do the modified SSK real fast here, but if you want a more in-depth slow motion sort of approach to it, just check the description box below and I'll link to it. So slip one as if to knit, one as if to purl, put your left needle through the front loop and then knit them together through the back loop. And that's your SSK. And now we work a plain row. So we work a plain row, decrease row a couple times, and then a few plain rows. And then we do the ribbing, as I said, and then we can weave in this end and leave this one. And so you can see here how I've got some gaps built up on this side here. So you can see it's quite a big gap here, here, and here are also a bit gappy. Over here, it's not so bad. There's a bit of one here, but that's filling in and the stitches will sort of move around and fill that. I could tighten that up if I wanted to. So in order to tighten things up, I obviously need to get my end onto the other side of this. So let's work on the other side. It's easier to see the gaps on the stockinette, I find. So I kept it that way to show you. All right, so the first thing to do is just to make sure that this is tight. Sometimes some of the gaps is just caused by this being loose. So just tug on this and make sure it's tight. And then what I like to do is you can kind of see how there's like a circle of yarn here that's here's it's going through a bit of a stitch, here it's going through a bit of a loop, and here. So if I kind of trace that around and I follow it, I can follow around like this, and then my yarn will sort of fall in that circle, and when I tug on it, it just tightens it right up. So then I can come over here and I can do the same sort of thing. So I've got here, here, and here for this one. So I'll just tug through or put my yarn through there. And come around on this side of the circle so that we can tighten that up. And then we'll come across over here and we'll do the same sort of thing. You can also just kind of crisscross across. So rather than circling it, you can sort of go from here to here and then kind of just go back. And then you'll find that it also just zips it shut. So this is the side of the sleeve where the gap was. And then we picked up stitches along here. So sometimes there's a gap over here. And if you are dealing with those gaps as well, what I just do is I just kind of skim my end along, almost like I'm weaving an end. So I'm splitting the plies as I go. I move across to this side and then I deal with it. But since I don't have gaps on that side, I'll just weave in my end and go. And just a reminder, don't sew in these ends until we attach our hands.
Okay. So, a couple things I want to go over and then we'll open up to questions. So, what I was trying to say and not doing a super great job of was explaining how we pick up stitches. And so if we cast on 4 stitches in our underarm and then we pick up those 4 stitches, that actually often leads to gaps. What will happen is there's sort of a distance. And I was describing that looking like a bit like a kid's house drawing where there's kind of like the rectangle of the house and then the roof, and you know how roofs stick out and then go up? It kind of happens in the knitting as well. The stitch kind of sticks out. And so if you pick up along the bottom of the house, it's going to have a farther distance to go to where the roof sticks out here. But if you pick up kind of along the side a little bit, that gap is shorter. So it's often called picking up in the corners. So if I pick up 4 stitches, I wouldn't necessarily pick them up exactly where I had cast them on. I might pick up the center one in the cast on stitches, but then I would pick up the other one somehow in between where the last stitch on the needle is and that bit. And it's often called picking up in the corners. And it's kind of like you're just kind of going up and around and bridging that gap. The yarn will fill in, the stitches do kind of plump up and fill, and you can often not even have gaps to deal with. When I was picking up stitches for the tutorial, I made sure on the second side not to pick up in the corner, and you could see how those gaps really built up on that one side. It gave me something to deliberately have to fill with my ends to show you how I deal with them in that kind of like circling method. But if you pick up not just along the base of the house, but a little bit on the sides, aka picking up in the corners, you'll often prevent gaps from happening at all. So that's one thing I just want to bring up. I didn't do a great job of verbalizing my thoughts as I was doing it for the tutorial. So I just wanted to make that super explicit that that's kind of what I was talking about. The other thing I want to talk about is what I filmed and then ended up cutting out was a lot of people pick up extra stitches when they do their pickup round for sleeves. So if you are a human sweater knitter, this may sound very familiar. And if you're not a human sweater knitter, and this is your first sweater because it's a gnome sweater, I'm just gonna, you might not need to know this at all, which is part of why I ended up cutting it from the original tutorial. But I'm just gonna say, if you're tempted to pick up extra stitches. So this is something that happens a lot in sweaters for humans, is rather than just picking up 4 stitches, you would actually pick up 4 plus 1 on this side plus 1 on this side. So you'd pick up the 4 picked up stitches, but you'd also pick up in the corners. So instead of having 4 stitches across the bottom there, you would end up with 6. And the way Gnoddy is written, because the beginning of round is kind of right in the middle of the pickup, you're just going to want to add an extra round to your gnome sleeve, and that's going to give you the extra round to knit, to decrease down to the original 4 in the pattern. You're not going to be able to do it just exactly as written because I go into decreases pretty quickly after that. And so you need to kind of, the way it's written, it just got a little messy trying to say it out loud without having written the pattern that way. And so if that makes sense to you, I think I'm just giving you permission to make your sleeve 1 round longer to get those additional stitches that you've picked up back down to your stitch count. You can do that. That 1 extra round isn't going to make a big difference. Or you could take the round out of the bit where we knit plain before we do our ribbing. And that's another great way to do it. Those of you that made no sense for and was confusing and weird, just ignore it. It doesn't apply to you. You can just pick it up exactly as I showed you in the video. And ignore the theoretical second alternative that doesn't help you. So hopefully that was clear to the people that needed it to be clear and not intimidating slash terrifying, confusing. Just, I wish she wouldn't have said that for everybody else. But I know that a bunch of you who are sweater knitters are going to be wondering about that. And so I really did want to address it. Okay, so that's something I just wanted to clarify. The whole picking up in the corners thing just can help really smooth the gaps from forming because the distance between the 4 stitches in the underarm and then those stitches already on the needles, if you minimize how far the yarn has to travel, you will reduce the odds of gaps forming. I'm going to check chat and then I'm going to see if anyone has questions. All right. So people can see and hear the videos, but they're jerky. It's just going to be one of those things. I'm on the best internet option I've got for this location in my house. And if anything doesn't work, after I'm finished here, I'm going to change the videos on YouTube from being private to public. I just didn't get to it before the meeting today. So both of these videos will be on YouTube and you'll be able to stream them at the full quality, sort of using just your internet. I'm not playing them through YouTube here because when I did that, I found it did slow it down. I'm playing them sort of locally on my desktop, and hopefully that's giving us a better version than the alternative. Okay. Does anyone know how many stitches along the front? That's a great question. Um, I do. Where's my book? Hang on. Okay, so that's in the body section. Um, okay, so after round 14, and the round 14 is the round where we're knitting across, we're putting the stitches on waste yarn, we're casting on the extra ones. You'll have 44 stitches at the end of round 14. But then we increase a couple of times. So the number of stitches on the front is going to be 22 stitches right at the point of sleeve separation. And then depending on where you are in the sweater, those 22 will increase. By the end, we are at a total of 52 stitches. So you'll increase up to 26 stitches for the front and 26 for the back. So I hope that helps you. It's not a really big deal on the body. You just need to knit down and do ribbing. There's not like the fact that like, and it's one by one ribbing, so even the orientation of it like being perfectly centered really isn't going to be an issue. There's no design element that comes with having that completely perfectly aligned. You just need to finish the body, and you can start your ribbing anywhere. I mean, I obviously started at the beginning round because that's how pattern writing works. But if it was slightly off, it wouldn't be a big deal. The only thing that knowing exactly where the midpoint of your front or back would come in is placing the beginning of round marker. No, placing the marker to let us know where we're going to be picking up stitches for the body. But honestly, again, the body has no distinguishing marks on it that needs to be exactly oriented to the front, or you're going to have some weird line lined up with the middle of Gnoddy. It just isn't like that. Gnoddy just continues on for a little bit, and then we do the turning row and we finish her decreases. So if you pick up the body a little bit to the right or left, it's not going to be a big deal. And even if you started picking up right in the front, again, it's not going to be a big deal because Gnoddy's body is very simple with no design elements. We just, in the pattern writing process, the editors and I in the book decided that anytime we were doing pickup stitches, we were going to try to leave those stitch markers to give you a guidepost so that it was easier for people who were newer to knitting gnomes. In particular, book knitters often forget to look on the internet for tutorials. And since I can't, they were unwilling for technical reasons, like the fact that websites go down and that makes books less permanently useful. They didn't want me to have links to videos. Everything needed to be able to function beautifully within just the book. And so we were leaving those guideposts just to make it a little bit easier for people. But it's not like having that back beginning of or the marker that we leave there to sort of help us pick up from the ribbing. If it's a little off, don't worry about it. Gnoddy's not got something special that has to be perfectly oriented. I know that came up in the chat this week on Ravelry. So all right. I think I should choose DK instead of fingering weight. Yeah, it's definitely fingering weight is small, and especially if you've got a dark yarn. I really encourage you to give yourself the gift of excellent lighting. Sit next to the window, get one of those craft lights that just shines right down on top of it and does the full spectrum light. It is absolutely amazing what a good light can do, even when your eyes are sort of fading away a bit. So that's just something to think about. Um, those of you who don't have the right stitch count, just fudge. Just get, as long as you're close. Polly's saying I will count again. If you're a little bit off, increase or decrease. Just kind of fudge it. It's just a sweater for a gnome. Um, it's totally fine. Just get there. Just get to the end of Naughty Sweater. That's all you really need to do this week. All right. Does anyone have a question they'd like to raise their electronic hand for? Or put in chat. We've been dealing with that. I'm going to go quickly and look at the gallery view of everybody. If you're having problems finding the electronic hand, just wave at me and I will be able to hopefully see you and then call on you to answer your question. So far, people look like they're knitting or paying attention and are happy. In order for me to see you, do remember if you've turned your camera off, I will not be able to see your waving. So the waving feature of the raising your hands does require you to go with camera on, because otherwise I'm just seeing your name and you're not communicating to me. So Okay, it looks like you guys are pretty happy. This Again, if you're not happy and you're confused, you can just come off mute. I mute everyone automatically on entry for these big group Zooms. But if you would like to unmute and just say things out loud, I will be quiet for a moment and give you a chance to do that.
How many people are doing the DK weight and how many people are doing the fingering weight?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, there's a way to do polls in these, but I think I have to enable the poll ahead of time. Usually it is at least 50% fingering weight or more. Let me see, Juanita here. I'm just going to spotlight Juanita because Juanita is doing a third option that we didn't ask about. Juanita, you're doing, is that the bulky weight one? Oh, you're muted still.
Super bulky.
Super bulky. Oh, so
I
gorgeous.
just finished her this minute.
Yeah. Oh,
Did you just use the yarn or needles to go with that yarn size and just work it that way?
I use size 8.
Okay.
So
It's adorable.
Yeah, she turned out really good. I did not put any weight in her because I figured she will be cuddly instead. So, and this is one of those multicolored, you know, the Karen cake things that change from color to color. And so I just kind of cut the colors apart and used them where I felt I wanted them.
yeah,
And then
I really want to do a bulky one. And I've been digging around in my stash since I got home. It was part of how I stayed awake yesterday. And my bulky weight stash is so frustratingly all over the place. Like bulky is a weight where it feels like there are no rules. It's like the chaos of the weight system. Like bulky can be like a little bit chunky, or it can be like knitting with rope. And the ply structure is huge with bulky weight yarns. So I don't know.
This one is nice and compressible, so it was easy. I think Rasta would be harder because it's firmer. This one is not super firm, so it was easy to knit at the smaller gauge.
Yeah, and then
So
it kind of popped up maybe a little bit and then filled in the
yeah,
gaps. Yeah.
yeah, and I had it left over from another project, so it's been sitting there reproaching me because because I had already cut apart the stripes because of the other project.
So if you put it next to your head, because like when you put things forward, it's really hard to tell. So, okay, so
Let me see if I can unblur me.
there we go. Okay, yeah, no, that's a that's a beautiful
Oh yeah,
size.
she's big.
Okay. I gotta figure this out. I really, really want a bulky weight version now. Okay, thank you so much, Juanita. So,
You're welcome.
I'm not sure who was asking the question because obviously your voice just kind of came through.
Blue
Just
sky makes a nice bulky that would go with that, I think.
Yeah. So there is one gnome that was written to have fingering weight, worsted weight, and bulky weight. And there's gauge ideas for that one. I mean, gauge for a gnome is pretty relative. But if you look here, this is my super bulky or bulky, I don't know quite where the boundary is, gnome. And the pattern is choose your gnome adventure. And so if you're looking for needle ideas for fingering and worsted and bulky, that pattern has all three. And there's gauge ideas for those as well. And it also is a pattern that lets you see how changing the yarn changes the yardage usage because I've got suggestions like with a buffer for all three of those as well. So you can see, oh, well, she says the fingering weight medium size takes this much and the bulky fingering weight or the bulky medium takes this much yarn, and it kind of can give you a little bit of a place to start playing when you change the yarn thickness if you're looking for a little bit more detail. Otherwise, what I just suggest people do is go down 1 or 2 needle sizes from the ball band as a starting place because what you're looking for is a fabric that is dense enough that it's not going to show the stuffing through. And the bigger the yarn, the more important this actually becomes because like just any gap between fingers is pretty small, but as soon as you start having gaps between bigger things, right, the gap is any gap sort of seems to be a bigger gap. And so you'll need to play around a little bit, cast on, see if it's right. It it should just basically be something like that. You're not seeing the stuff through. You want it to be dense and firm enough that it's got a little bit of body and it's sort of, so it's not like drapey. We're not looking for drapey fabric. And then the other thing to know is if you're going up needle those yarn sizes, your weighted stuffing is probably going to have to change or go into a baggie or something, because the fabric size is just so much bigger that like the weighted stuffing is just going to squirm through the stitches really easily. So go with something more like a bean bag than beans.
That's a beans.
Does anyone else have questions? Okay. Sounds good. We'll move on to the hand part then. So the hands are done the same way as this little hat bobble. So you're gonna knit a little bit of chunky I-cord, and then you're gonna fold it in half, whip stitch along one side. And now we're gonna figure out what to do with them in those sleeves, which I said not to sew shut so that you had the cuff as open as possible. So let's do that one for us now. Okay.
The Gnoddy here has 3 baubles, basically. There's a bauble that gets attached to the top of the hat, made in that color, and then 2 hand color baubles that are made and then attached into the sleeve. So we need to do that step next in our Gnoddy. So the bauble will have 2 ends on it, and it's going to be a little easier. It's going to be a little easier to work if both of these are the same length. So I'm just going to trim this one up. Now we're going to thread both of these on a yarn needle. My trick for threading needles is as follows. Don't try to thread onto the ends. Instead, not too far from the end, just bend, fold over your fabric, or your ends like this, pinch it between your thumb and finger, place the eye of the needle right up next to that bend, and as you open the pinch, they will start to go through. It's a little harder with 2 ends than with 1. You may need to get a yarn needle with a bigger eye than I've got, but I've got that. It's going through, so let's keep going. So I'm going to pull this through. If you are really struggling with this, you could bury one end in your bauble and just work with the one, so that's definitely an option too. All right, so what we need to do is we need to get this bauble lodged in this hand here. So we haven't sewn in the end of the cuff. We've left that open so that this acts almost like an unbuttoned cuff on a formal shirt. So we're going to put the needle through. We're going to bring both ends through that way, and that's going to give us the ability to tug on this end and pull the bauble in and sort of lodge it, as it were. So I'm going to take this off. We'll just be grabbing at these ends for the moment. So now I'm really going to pull on them and try to get that bauble so that it's just however deep I want within the cuff. So if I go really, really deep, obviously it's just going to vanish and it's not going to be visible. So I want it to be visible enough. And then we're going to use this cuff end, and we're going to use that to sort of skewer the bauble and keep it in place. One thing you can do if you want is you can first sort of sew up the open bit of the cuff. So if I go under across the gap there and then back, that just sort of completes the cuff and makes it back into a circle. So that's something you could do right now if you want. You can also do it at the end. And you can see by doing that, I kind of circled that back up. All right, so now we're going to make an asterisk style pattern, and we're going to go through, and I'm making sure that I'm going through the cuff, the bauble, and then the cuff again. And again, I'm going to keep hold on these 2 ends just to keep that in place. I can also keep hold on it through here. So that was sort of one point in the asterisk. So let's go through and come out over here. And then let's go in there and come out over here. And we're just sort of securing that bauble by going down, back and through in multiple ways, in multiple places. If this is going to be a toy, I would suggest continuing to secure in multiple places, in multiple ways. If it's going to be a decoration, you could be done. So just put your needle through the bauble one last time, thread it up into the sleeve. And then you can just pull it in. And all three of these ends can now be woven in. You can weave them in or you can lose them. They will just act like stuffing. The ends from the hand aren't going anywhere. They don't need to be woven in. It depends on how that makes you feel. I'm just going to quickly secure this end from the sleeve that we were using just now. And I'm just going to split the plies a few times, go back and forth in a bit of a zigzag motion here and secure it. You could also tie all three ends together one more time. That would be a nice tidy way of making sure that everything is locked in there. And then if you just leave all of those sort of stuffed up in there and flip it back around, the arm is already a little bit stuffed and the ends won't be in your way when you go to work the rest of the body. And that's how we do the hands-on knotting.
Okay. So Claire has written an extra thought if it's going to be a toy. I wonder if you could tie the ends of the hand baubles together inside the body of the gnome, like having a long cord between the mittens, the kids' mittens, so they don't lose them. That definitely could work. I think the danger would be that if you do it too short, you're going to kind of like scooch those together a wee bit. So you definitely want to make sure that it's slack across sort of the width of it. It's also going to make it harder maybe to do if you want to do like this one, for instance. I've sewn the arm down with a little bit of a pose here and then sewn this one down. I think it might make it a little harder to do that. But it would definitely be something worth playing around. I think you could tie all three together and then just weave in all three a little bit, and you should be fine. That asterisk format really does secure them quite securely, and as long as the ends are then secured, the series of events that would have to happen to unsecure the ends and then get them back out through that asterisk, I think it's a pretty solid attachment for how small that all is. All right. Cheryl's saying the video's in slow motion. Did you intend it to be that way? No. There might be a little bit of an internet lag either on my end or your end, Cheryl. The good news is that these videos will be on YouTube. Once I'm done with you guys here, I'm going to go and hit and switch them from private to public. They'll be there and you'll be able to watch those two videos in the time without them slowing down and with my voice being normal speed, which I hope that wasn't also slow. That would be terrible. Awesome. Okay, so that's it for today. So we're not stuffing them today. We're not picking up stitches from the sleeve this week. We're just doing the sleeves and lodging the hands and knitting the body. We knit the body first as written in the pattern. So knit your body and come back, pick up those sleeves, pick up across the gap, knit those down. And I'm just going to remind everybody that knitting very few stitches in the round is a hassle, and it's not you, it's the pattern. Blame either me or the gnomes as you work those. I don't know, is it like 12 stitches or whatever it is, 10 on the body or on the sleeves there? It's just going to be a little bit awkward. I found I tended to tighten up a little bit. So just remind yourself to relax those shoulders. Your shoulders don't need to try to eat your ears, right? We get all like worked up and they just get like very scary, predatory shoulders. And just remember, pull those down, relax. It's not many rounds of just those very few stitches. It's also not you. It's the fact that you're only knitting 10 stitches or so in the round. It's just kind of not easy for anybody. As you keep going, most of us develop a sense of like somehow we get either we get better at it or we get more comfortable with the way it feels. I'm not sure which, but just know that it's not you. It's going to be a little awkward. Don't blame yourself. Like I said, either blame the gnomes or me. I can take it. So can they. So this week it's again, Gnoddy is a very small gnome. There's not a lot to Gnoddy. One of the things I loved about the book is I could knit a few smaller gnomes, and it feels like with mystery gnomes, I always have to give you like good bang for your buck. And I don't want to make you buy a yarn set, like a mystery gnome set or mystery gnome yarn kit, and then like only use a total of 10 grams of yarn, even though you've bought 4 colors or something like that. The book was a chance to go and do some smaller ones and feel zero guilt about your yarn usage. So Gnoddy's not a lot of knitting. So last week we did sort of the top bit. This week we're doing the middle bit. And next week we will finish up the body, talk about how to stuff those armpits. If you're already working ahead, I'm just going to say straight up ahead, don't overstuff the armpit area. Right here, if you leave that kind of like, this is a separate bit of stuffing, and then this is a separate bit of stuffing. If there's a break here, not like a big gap necessarily, but there's a break here, you will find this is able to move a little more freely and won't tend to want to be doing like the letter T. You can have a little bit more, and you can even go in afterwards and kind of pinch and just try to like work that around and kind of split it up and just give yourself a little bit more armpit maneuvering, a little bit more of a joint in there. And you can also sew them down. As I said, I wanted to do that in this one for the book, just to show you how that changes the personality of sort of the arms out versus arms in look. It just is a nice little change for what you're doing. Obviously, this gnome is able to, in the book, pull my little red wheelbarrow or wheel, what's the word I'm looking for? Like little red wagon. Whereas this gnome, I would not be able to pose that way. It would be much more awkward. So I guess we could maybe make it work, but this is able to do things that this one isn't. And so there's a use for both approaches to the arms. And we'll stuff them together, but in case you're racing ahead, because it is sometimes hard to slow down and not just finish small projects like this, and that's fine. You can knit Gnoddy at whatever speed you want, and I just want to remind everybody that you can knit multiple Gnoddys during this month. If you're knitting them for the Gnoddy Knitalong, which is what this meeting is about, you can enter as many times as you finish Gnoddys. If you are doing the Year of Gnomes and you just want to enter for May's prize drawing, you're only ever allowed 1 entry, no matter how many gnomes you knit. So you can put a picture, if you knit 10 gnomes, you can put a picture of 10 gnomes, you just don't get 10 entries. You get 1 single entry in the Year of Gnomes thread. But Gnoddy is not a thread. Gnoddy is going to be a Google form. That way, if you are not on Ravelry, you're just on Instagram, you'll be able to enter either way. And that form is not up yet. So there's been a little confusion about that. With the guided knit-alongs, I just want to encourage people to go slowly and to let me teach them. So I don't actually put the end to start. I make you wait for it. And I'm hoping always that helps you enjoy the slower pace. I do want to quickly add one more thing. Those of you who are tempted to add your own color work, and the thread is full of some really interesting things, I just want to remind you that the orientation of the gnome sweater is top down. And so this matters because most colorwork charts are shown as squares. And our knitting stitches aren't square. In fact, they're more like rectangles. They're not quite square. They're a little bit wider than they are tall, and they are also V-shaped. So it makes a difference if the V's are going up or the V's are going down, because depending on the shape, what you might get is the one part of the stitch will like stick out from your motif, whereas if you knit the same motif from the bottom up, that V is just going to keep stacking up and provide like a really nice diagonal line. But that doesn't happen when we go top down. They kind of like just kind of feather out. So just a thing to think about when if you're designing your own motifs or you're grabbing something from a book. You just be aware that when you're putting those in, that they may end up looking a little different than you were originally expecting. But if you're just doing kind of geometric, like little boxes or little bits, it shouldn't make too much of a difference. And then the last thing I will do before checking in for questions is there was a question in the Ravelry thread about with the stripes, how you can see my beginning of row got a little messy there, but that's okay because the back of Gnoddy is not in the book. Only the front of Gnoddy is in the book. And most of us put Gnoddy on a shelf, so it doesn't matter for you either. So there was a question about where to be doing the color change because of the increases for the raglan shaping. Generally speaking, when I'm doing stripes, I like to do it so that the stripe color is already established before I do an increase, particularly if the increase is a knit front and back. When you do a knit front and back, the act of knitting into the back pulls a little bit of that stitch loop into the row above. And so if you're changing colors right there, it'll change a little bit of a blip of color, pulling it up. Whereas if you've already knit a row in the new color and then you do a knit front and back, it tends to just leave that color change and the stripe a little crisper all the way along that line. So that's my preference. Do one row in the new stripe color, then do a knit front and back increase row. Roughly, that's the way I like to do it. Obviously, there's lots of stuff that like ifs, ands, and buts for everything might be a little different depending on how often the sleeve shaping is versus if you're doing a 3-round stripe and it's every other row striping or every other row increases, you're going to be at odds because you've got a 3-row and then a 2-row. And if your stripes are 3 rows and your increases are 2 rows, you don't have really as finite or you can't make decisions quite as finely. You're just going to go with it and love what happens. Okay. Anne had a quick question. What is used for weight in the base? Yeah, so we'll go into that in depth next week. But I will say, if you are curious, if you go to the Gnome Schooling playlist on my YouTube channel, there is a thing about stuffing gnomes, and that's the video we're gonna play next week. People use a bunch of different things. So I use split peas because they are nice and heavy, and they they're sort of like the right size, but I also live somewhere where pests aren't a problem. So a lot of other people will use things like poly pellets, which are a plastic version, and they'll be right beside the polyfill in a craft store. And they are meant to be child safe for 3 and up because they are small enough that if they are inhaled, they don't actually block the airway for those 3 and up. But polyfill is plastic, so then a lot of people who are trying to minimize their plastic will use things, like I said, like split peas or beans or aquarium gravel. Some people just use like rocks. And I am going to say this again and again, that anything you stuff your gnome with could become a weapon. All toddlers that I know will pick things up by their head and hit their siblings with it eventually. So if you're putting like a big metal washer in, which is what some people do, you can buy washers of all different sizes. Like there are washers as big as this. I don't know what on earth people are building with them, but gnome knitters are sometimes knitting them and putting them at the bottom. But that is very dangerous, as is a rock. So just think about what you're using, but we'll cover that next week. Okay, Tara, I see that you are waiting with your hand up. What is your question?
Well, it's kind of more of a comment. Because here's my little guy. And on the underarm, I didn't notice that you had the in the corner thing, so I just did the 4 across. But instead of knitting the first 2 together, I knit the second and third together, which covered that corner.
Yeah, there are some things you can do with the placement of decreases and how directional they are. Like you can sometimes use them to like cover up a gap by pushing them in the direction of the gap and things like that. So there's lots,
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
getting to
so
adult
and
sweaters.
that was just something that I learned
Yeah.
doing sleeves on sweaters and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Or even socks, there's places where you do it. It's like, oh, look, if you go from here to here, there's going to be holes. So knit those two together and then it
Yeah.
closes that hole. And you can do it much prettier on socks and stuff, but I mean, he's a gnome. The other thing I did was, first of all, put his hat on crooked. Um, but I also moved his arms forward.
Oh,
So on when you start the
and you put the
raglan,
markers?
uh-huh,
Yeah.
I moved those two markers towards the front of his body by one stitch. And it it kind of brings his arms forward and
Yeah.
down instead of straight out.
That's
And
interesting.
so you can see on the side that
Yeah.
they're a little bit in front. And that's how his hat got on crooked is when I started those things, it kind of made his hat on crooked. But you know, he just
Yeah.
missed his head when he put it on.
Oh, that's
So,
good to know. I'm going to play with that because this is definitely an approach to gnome bodies that I want to play with more. Like I want to see what else we can do with this. And so this will not be the only gnome knit this
yeah,
way
and
for
he
sure.
was small enough that because I thought about moving him 2 stitches forward, but I didn't know, I didn't want to do that and then have him look, you know, like he's doing this.
Yeah.
So I just did the one and I like it, you know,
Yeah. I do
because
too.
my other one, his arms stick straight out to the side, um,
Yeah.
like he's frightened or something. And this one, he kind of, it's a little bit
Yeah.
in, but that, I mean, and that's, you know, for people knitting it the first time, definitely stay to your pattern because your patterns are incredible. But you
Yeah.
know, I like to mess with.
Yeah, and I like hearing what people do because sometimes I will look at it and go, I love that. I'm incorporating that. And sometimes people tell me things and I'm like, I don't like that. And I'm going to make sure that I know that like I don't like the way it turned out. And that's actually also useful information for me. So even the people who are doing things and I'm like, it's not totally my approach. I still learn from everything. And I love
Yeah,
that.
and that's kind of what I do too. And I mean, when I'm not test knitting, because when I test knit, I do it exactly the way you say. But when I'm not, I just it's like I don't prefer this way of doing it. I do
Yeah.
it my way. Like you always do knit three, knit two together. I always do knit two together, knit three. You know, it
Yeah.
still comes out round, but
Yeah.
you know, things like that. But yeah, so but even like I say, when I do it exactly the way the pattern is written, it works just as well. And um
Yeah,
I
you might need to like shape the arms a little bit, like even if you steam them a little bit, and you can probably bring them forward and down just by steaming them a little bit too. Those of you who've done them with the
yeah,
pattern.
yeah, and I don't think I very seldom block any parts of my gnome.
Yeah.
I stuff them and that like blocks them for me.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the
Well,
color
thank
work
you.
ones I do, but these
Yeah.
guys I just, you know, and then pins.
Yes.
Pins will make my gnomes do all kinds of things.
Yes, for photos especially. All right. Thanks so much, Tara.
You're welcome.
All right. Does anyone else have a question? Or I noticed in chat we've just got a Dirty Dancing reference. Don't put Naughty in a corner. Nobody puts Naughty in a corner, which I loved. That was in reference to me putting them on a shelf. But uh, does anyone have anything else they'd like to share? Or are we just like in an efficient kind of mood today? Because that's fine too. We can get in, get gnoming, and get out. Okay, it's like the least chatty Zoom ever. Maybe next week, as we are wrapping things up, you'll have more questions, or then the week after when you're showing off your finished gnomes, then we'll have oodles of questions, or like not questions, but like gnomes to show. Hopefully that meeting, I don't have to do so much all about me and my gnomes. I want to see your gnomes, but that'll come next week. So enjoy your little bitty sweater knitting. Gnome sweaters that are top down raglans are very similar to human sweaters. We obviously have shoulders and necks in a way that they don't. And so there are some things that we need to do to fit ourselves. But the basic gist of a gnome sweater is the way sweaters are done, top down raglans. So if you thought, hey, that wasn't so hard. Yes, top down raglans really aren't so hard. Maybe think about making your first sweater. Have a great week, everyone. Get your sweater done, enjoy yourselves. If you're looking for something to do, start a second Gnoddy. Or think about embroidering the sweater. This is a really good chance to like duplicate stitch or add beading or embroider something and just add a little bit of sizzle to your sweater if you're bored. If you're bored too, you could knit other things. It doesn't have to be just gnomes, even for me. I'm working on a present for my daughter. I'm doing a lily pilly shawl / wrap, and it's not a gnome and it's not one of my patterns, and I'm having a great time. So there's other options. I hope you guys all have an excellent week. And Susan, I think my triplets may become quads. Yeah, I mean, more Gnoddies are it just gets better. This is, I believe, number 5 for me. And obviously a bulky weight one is in my future. Once I can sort out my bulky weight stash, I may end up holding worsted double. I have lots of worsted and very little bulky weight. So I'm thinking that may be the way I end up. Anyways, I hope you guys all have a fantastic week. I'm going to go over to YouTube and make those videos available should you need to rewatch them. This one will be posted depending on how long it takes to format and then upload. This one will be done within 24 hours and available. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. I hope you have a great week. See y'all.